Beneath the twin suns of Xerxes Prime, where the sands shimmered like molten glass and the wind howled secrets older than stars, a lone figure stumbled through the dunes. His name was Joran, once a scout of the Terran Frontier Corps, now just a man with a blaster at his hip, a dented canteen on his belt, and a past he couldn't outrun. Sand clung to his sweat-streaked face. His boots were half buried with every step, and his eyes, sharp despite exhaustion, scanned the horizon for anything that wasn't endless ochre. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His water ran out yesterday. And still, he walked. Not because he believed in survival, but because stopping meant surrendering to the silence, and silence on Xerxes was louder than death. He'd come here chasing rumors. Whispers of a fallen royal caravan, a lost vault of alien tech, maybe even passage off this cursed rock. What he hadn't expected was to find her. She lay half-buried near the base of a wind-carved mesa, curled like a broken doll in robes of once golden silk now stained black with blood. Her skin was the color of moonlit snow, pale, almost luminous, and her hair, long and silver-white, fanned out behind her like shattered frost. Even in ruin, she radiated dignity. Her delicate fingers twitched, her chest rose in shallow, ragged breaths, and when Joran knelt beside her, she cracked open eyes that glowed faintly violet, like distant nebulae seen through a telescope. "Don't." Her voice was a threadbare whisper, cracked but strangely melodic. "You mustn't touch me, human." Joran froze. He'd seen enough alien biology briefings to know some species carried bioelectric fields, toxic pheromones, or symbiotic parasites that reacted violently to foreign contact. But this woman, no, this queen, was bleeding from wounds that wouldn't close, her side torn by what looked like plasma shrapnel, her arms bruised with restraints. She was dying, and yet, she warned him away. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly, holding up his empty hands. "I'm just passing through." A dry, brittle laugh escaped her lips. "Passing through? On Xerxes? Alone? You're either a fool or a ghost." "Maybe both," Joran admitted, glancing over his shoulder. The dunes were still but not peaceful. Something had hunted her. Something that left scorched sand and the smell of ionized ozone in its wake. "What happened to you?" Her violet eyes dimmed. "Betrayal," she said simply. "My own blood turned against me. My chancellor, my cousin. They called it a blood cleansing. Said my rule had grown soft. That I favored outsiders. That I dared to speak with humans." She coughed, a wet, painful sound. "They left me here to be devoured by skitterwolves? Or the sun?" Joran's jaw tightened. He'd known betrayal too, betrayed by his own command after refusing an order to burn a civilian refugee camp during the Virelian uprising. They'd branded him a traitor, stripped his rank, and left him drifting between war-torn systems with nothing but his conscience. He recognized that hollow look in her eyes, the kind that came not from pain, but from being forsaken by those you trusted most. He reached for his medkit. "Stop!" she gasped, lifting a trembling hand. "My blood. It's not like yours. If it touches your skin, you could—" She trailed off, breath ragged. "Could what?" Joran asked, not pulling back. "Transform," she whispered. "Or die. Or both. My lineage carries the Velari gene, the royal strain. Contact with open wounds. It bonds. Irreversibly. You'd become part of my bloodline. Or your body would reject it and shut down. I won't have another death on my conscience." Joran stared at her, then at the kit in his hands. Behind him, a low growl rumbled through the heat haze. Skitterwolves, six-legged, armored predators with serrated beaks and eyes like burning coals, were circling from the east, drawn by the scent of blood. Their chittering filled the air like broken glass dragged across metal. "Lady," Joran said, voice calm despite his pulse hammering. "I've got 2 bullets left, a half-charged plasma torch, and a stubborn habit of doing the stupid thing when it matters most." He opened the medkit. "If your blood's gonna kill me, fine. But I'm not leaving you for those things." Before she could protest, he tore a strip from his shirt, wrapped it around his hand like a glove, and pressed it to her wound. She cried out, not in pain but in terror. Her body convulsed, and for a heartbeat, her skin flared with an inner light, silver-blue veins pulsing beneath the surface. Joran felt a jolt up his arm, like static mixed with ice, and his vision blurred for a second. But he held firm, applying pressure. "You fool!" she breathed, tears streaking through the dust on her cheeks. "Now you're bound." "Good," Joran grunted, scanning the dunes. The skitterwolves were closer, 3 of them now, their claws scraping stone. Means I've got a reason to keep you alive. He helped her sit up, supporting her weight despite her protests. She was lighter than she looked, almost fragile, but her grip on his arm was iron. My name is Lyra, she said suddenly. Lyra Velari, Queen of the 7th Spiral. And you, human, what do they call you? Joran, he said. Just Joran. Just Joran? She repeated, a ghost of a smile on her lips. You have no idea what you've done. The first skitterwolf lunged. Joran fired. The shot caught it in the eye, and the beast shrieked, collapsing in a cloud of sand and smoke. The other 2 hesitated, just long enough for Joran to activate his plasma torch. The blue flame hissed to life, casting eerie shadows across Lyra's pale face. She stared at the weapon, then at him. You carry fire, she murmured. Interesting. Desert Survival 101, Joran said, backing slowly toward a narrow crevice in the mesa. Fire keeps most things away. Not all, but most. They squeezed into the rocky slit just as the second wolf leapt. Joran swung the torch, searing its underbelly. It howled and retreated, but not before slashing his thigh with a claw. Blood soaked his pants instantly. Lyra gasped. You're hurt. Scratch, Joran said through gritted teeth. Though the pain was sharp and hot, he slumped against the stone, breathing hard. The skitterwolves paced outside, their eyes glowing like embers in the dusk. Lyra looked at his wound, then at her own blood still smeared on his makeshift glove. Her expression shifted. Something ancient and sorrowful flickered in her eyes. Without warning, she pressed her palm over his leg. Wait, Joran started, but it was too late. Her touch sent a wave of warmth through him. Not painful, but overwhelming, like sunlight after years of rain. His wound tingled, then sealed itself with threads of silver light. He looked down in shock. The gash was gone. Only a faint scar remained, shimmering faintly. What? He whispered. The Velari blood, she said quietly. It heals its own. And now, you are its own. Joran stared at her, heart pounding not from injury, but from something deeper. A strange calm settled over him, as if the desert itself had exhaled into his lungs. So, I'm not going to die. You might wish you would, she said, a flicker of dark humor crossing her face. Bonding carries consequences. The Velari gene awakens latent traits. You'll feel changes, heightened senses, faster healing, maybe even visions. And if I die, you die too. Joran let out a short, disbelieving laugh. You're kidding. I never joke about blood bonds, Lyra said, though her lips twitched. It's why my enemies left me to rot. They didn't dare touch me. Too risky. Too sacred. Outside, the skitterwolves gave up and slunk away into the night. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in violet and crimson. Inside the crevice, the air grew cold. Joran shrugged off his tattered jacket and draped it over Lyra's shoulders. She didn't refuse. Where's your palace? He asked after a long silence. Gone, she said, or rather occupied. My cousin, Varek, sits on the obsidian throne now. He declared me dead before my blood even cooled. Her voice trembled with fury. He'll slaughter every loyalist, burn every archive, erase our history, all to prove purity. So we go back, Joran said simply. Lyra blinked. We? You need an army. I need redemption. And frankly, I've got nothing better to do. He offered a tired grin. Besides, I've always wanted to punch a traitorous alien prince in the face. For the first time, Lyra laughed. A real laugh, bright and clear like chimes in a storm. Varek isn't a prince. He's a scholar turned butcher. But yes, he deserves a good punch. They spent the night in the crevice, huddled close for warmth. Lyra drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring half-remembered lullabies in her native tongue. Joran kept watch, his new senses humming. He could hear the scuttle of sandcrawlers a kilometer away, smell the metallic tang of approaching rain, a rare miracle on Xerxes, and feel the faint pulse of Lyra's heartbeat like a drum against his side. By dawn, she was stronger. The Velari healing had done its work. She stood, brushing sand from her robes, her posture regal once more. There's a hidden way into the palace, she said. Through the catacombs beneath the salt spires. Only royal blood can open the seal. Lucky for you, Joran said, standing and stretching. You've got a human carrying a piece of it now. She studied him, really studied him, for the first time. Why help me, Joran? You owe me nothing. He looked out at the rising suns. Maybe because the universe keeps throwing us into the same fire, he said. Or maybe, I just can't stand to see someone left behind. They walked for 2 days across the desert, avoiding patrols of Varek's black-armored sentinels. Joran's senses sharpened with each passing hour. He could taste lies in the wind, sense ambushes before they happened. Once, he caught the glint of a sniper's scope a mile off and pulled Lyra behind cover just as plasma bolts scorched the dune where she'd stood. Your reflexes, she said, wide-eyed. Not mine, he admitted. Yours. Your blood's rewiring me. She touched his cheek, her fingers cool. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said. It's the first time I've felt whole. At the salt spires, towering crystalline formations that sang in the wind, they found the entrance. A smooth obsidian door etched with spirals. Lyra pressed her palm to it. Nothing happened. She frowned. Try me, Joran said. She hesitated, then took his hand and placed it beside hers. The door glowed silver, then split open with a sigh. Inside, the catacombs were vast. A labyrinth of bone-white corridors lit by bioluminescent moss. Murals lined the walls. Velari queens leading starfleets, negotiating peace with insectoid empires, adopting orphaned alien children into their bloodlines. We weren't warriors, Lyra said softly. We were bridge builders. That's what Varek hates most. Deeper in, they found survivors, loyal guards, scholars, children, hiding in chambers stocked with water and rations. When they saw Lyra, they wept. When they saw Joran, they stared in awe. The human bonded to the queen, one elder whispered. The prophecy. Lyra shook her head. There's no prophecy. Just a man who refused to walk away. But Joran noticed the way they looked at him. Not with suspicion, but reverence. Like he was something more than human now. And maybe he was. They planned their assault. Varek would hold the coronation ceremony at moonrise, sealing his rule with a blood vow. If they struck then, during the ritual, the palace shields would be down. Only royal blood could lower them, and Varek, being of diluted lineage, needed the ancestral altar to amplify his claim. We go in quiet, Joran said, cleaning his blaster. I get you to the throne room. You challenge him before the court. If he's as arrogant as you say, he'll accept. He'll try to kill me, Lyra said. Then I'll be there to stop him. She looked at him, her violet eyes shimmering. And if I fall? Then I fall with you, he said simply. But I'd rather we both walk out. The night of the coronation, the desert wind howled like a chorus of ghosts. Joran and Lyra moved through service tunnels beneath the palace, their footsteps silent. Above, the halls echoed with chants and the clink of armor. The air smelled of incense and ozone. They emerged behind the throne dais just as Varek, draped in black and silver, raised a ceremonial dagger to cut his palm. The court, hundreds of Velari nobles in ornate robes, watched in silence. By blood and bone, Varek intoned, I claim the throne that isn't yours, Lyra interrupted, stepping into the light. Gasps filled the chamber. Varek spun, eyes wide with fury and fear. You should be dead. I got better, she said coolly. And I brought a friend. Joran stepped forward, blaster raised but not aimed. Heard there was a party. Chaos erupted. Guards surged forward, but Lyra's loyalists, hidden among the crowd, rose up, drawing hidden blades. The throne room became a storm of motion and light. Varek lunged at Lyra, dagger flashing. Joran intercepted, knocking the blade aside with his plasma torch. The two men crashed into a pillar, Varek snarling like a beast. You think a human mongrel can stand against Velari purity? Purity's overrated, Joran grunted, blocking a vicious kick. Compassion's stronger. He disarmed Varek with a twist of his wrist and pinned him to the floor. Lyra approached, her expression calm but devastating. You betrayed your people, she said. You betrayed our ancestors. And you betrayed me. Varek spat. You made us weak, allowing outsiders, sharing our secrets. We made us wise, she corrected. And that's why you'll never understand. She raised her hand. The ancestral altar glowed. Varek screamed as his connection to the royal line was severed. His skin paled, his strength fled. He was no longer of the blood, just a man. The chamber fell silent. Lyra turned to her people. This ends now. No more blood cleansing. No more walls. From this day, The Velari open their doors to all who seek peace. Cheers erupted, tears flowed, and Joran stood there, covered in dust and blood, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Later, on the palace balcony overlooking the endless desert, Lyra stood beside him. The twin moons cast silver light over her white hair. "You could stay," she said quietly. Joran looked at her, at the queen who'd been betrayed, bled, and left for dead, yet still chose mercy, at the woman whose blood now beat in his veins. "I already have," he said, and beneath the alien stars, on a desert world where nothing was supposed to grow, something new took root, something fragile, fierce, and full of promise. The days that followed should have been peaceful. Lyra reclaimed her throne not with vengeance, but with grace, pardoning those who had merely bowed to Varric out of fear, exiling only the truly cruel, and appointing new stewards from among the desert nomads, the scholars, and even a few off-world traders. The people whispered that the queen had returned not alone, but with a human shadow at her side, quiet, watchful, and strangely radiant, as if his skin now held the memory of twin sons. Joran, for his part, tried to settle into this new life. He was given quarters in the eastern spire, a room with wide windows that looked out over the dunes and a bath carved from singing saltstone. Servants brought him meals of spiced skyfish and moonberry wine, and though he accepted them with thanks, he often slipped out at night to walk the palace walls, his blaster still strapped to his hip like an old friend who hadn't yet forgiven him for leaving it unused. But peace on Xerxes Prime was never more than a lull between storms. It began with a tremor, not of the ground, but of Joran's own body. One morning, as he shaved with a ceremonial obsidian blade, a gift from Lyra. "So you may always see your true face," his reflection flickered. For just a heartbeat, his eyes glowed violet, his veins shimmered silver beneath his skin, and his voice, when he spoke aloud to himself, echoed with a resonance that wasn't entirely his own. Then came the dreams. He saw Lyra, not as she was now, seated on her throne, issuing decrees, but as a child, kneeling in a garden of crystalline flowers, burying a tiny, feathered creature that had fallen from the sky. He felt her grief as if it were his own. In another dream, he stood on the bridge of a Velari warship, watching a fleet of black-hulled destroyers burn in the void, ships bearing no insignia, no flag, just silence and fire, and always, a voice. "The bond is not complete. The blood demands witness." He didn't tell Lyra at first. He thought it was just the Velari gene adapting him, reshaping him piece by piece into something worthy of the bond. But then the desert began to answer him. While walking the outer dunes with a patrol, Joran heard a low hum beneath the sand, like a heartbeat. He knelt, pressing his palm to the ground. The sand parted slightly, revealing a smooth, obsidian disc etched with spirals identical to the palace door. The guards stared in awe. "The Heartstone," one whispered, "lost for centuries, said to awaken only for true Velari, or those bound to them." Back in the palace archives, Lyra pored over forgotten scrolls. Her hands trembled as she translated a brittle text written in starlight ink. "When royal blood is shared with an outsider through sacrifice and intent, the bond forms a dyad. Not servant and sovereign, not protector and protected, but two halves of one soul. If one dies, the other perishes. But if both survive the trial of echoes, they become the anchor, capable of reawakening the world song, the ancient power that once shaped Xerxes from chaos." "The trial of echoes?" Joran asked, his voice tight. Lyra looked up, her violet eyes dark with dread. "It's not a trial you walk into. It finds you. When the bond deepens beyond flesh, it calls you into the lattice, the space between memory and time. There, you must face your deepest regrets, your hidden shames, and your secret hopes, and you must face them together. If you lie to each other, even once, the lattice consumes you. If you refuse to forgive, it shatters your minds." Joran laughed, but it was hollow. "So let me get this straight. Not only am I stuck with you for life, but if I ever admit I once stole a chocolate bar from a medbay vending machine during basic training, I'll dissolve into cosmic dust." Lyra's lips quirked. "Only if you still feel guilt over it." "I do," he said solemnly. "It was premium dark, with almonds." She laughed then, a real, bright sound that made the archive lanterns flicker in sympathy. But the laughter faded quickly. "Joran, my deepest regret isn't Varric's betrayal. It's that I exiled my younger sister, Soria, years ago. She wanted to dismantle the monarchy entirely, turn the spiral into a council of equals. I called her reckless, told her she endangered our people. I banished her to the outer rim. She never returned. Her voice broke. I think she's dead. And I never got to say I was wrong. Joran reached for her hand. Their fingers touched, and the world vanished. They stood in a place with no sky, no ground, only swirling threads of light, like a tapestry woven from forgotten lives. The lattice. Before them loomed two doors. One glowed gold, Lyra's memories. The other pulsed deep blue, Joran's. You go first, he said. She hesitated, then stepped through the golden door. Joran waited. Minutes stretched like hours. Then screams echoed. Not of pain, but of grief. He ran through the door. Inside, he saw Lyra as a girl of 16, standing in a star chamber as her sister Soria begged her. Don't sign the exile decree. Please, Lyra. I only wanted us to be free. But the vision Lyra turned away, voice cold. Freedom without order is chaos, and chaos kills. The real Lyra collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I was wrong, she whispered. I was so scared of losing control that I lost her instead. The memory dissolved. Now they stood before Joran's door. He took a breath and stepped through. He was back on the refugee moon of Silos 9. Smoke filled the air. Children cried. His commanding officer shouted, Burn the tunnels! They're hiding insurgents in there. But Joran saw the truth. Mothers, elders, babies huddled in the dark. He refused. And when he did, his own squad turned on him. He was beaten, branded a traitor, left for dead in a crater. But the lattice showed him what he'd never known. One child, a girl with silver eyes, had survived because of his defiance. She'd grown up to become a diplomat, brokered peace between three warring systems. His choice had rippled outward like a stone in water. Yet in the corner of the vision, darker still, was another truth. The reason he'd refused the order wasn't just principle. It was because his younger brother had died in a similar cleansing years before, and he'd sworn never to let it happen again. He'd carried that guilt in silence, never speaking his brother's name aloud. Tears streamed down Joran's face. I didn't do it for them, he whispered. I did it to atone. Lyra, now beside him in the vision, touched his shoulder. That doesn't make it less noble. It makes you human. And in that moment, the lattice shimmered, not with judgment, but with understanding. The threads of light wove around them, stitching their truths together. The trial was past. But as they stepped back into the archive, gasping, a new alarm blared through the palace. Black ships, hundreds of them, descended from the upper atmosphere. Not Varek's ragged fleet. These were sleek, silent, bearing no markings, just smooth hulls that drank the sunlight. They hovered over the salt spires like ghosts. The Scourge, Lyra breathed, paling. I thought they were myth. Joran frowned. I saw them in my dream. The Scourge were an ancient sect, once part of the Velari themselves, who believed purity could only be achieved through total isolation, and, if necessary, total annihilation. They'd vanished centuries ago, rumored to have fled beyond the galactic rim. Now they'd returned, drawn by the awakening of the Heartstone, and the bond between queen and human. They see us as abomination, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. A human carrying royal blood? To them, it's sacrilege. The Scourge didn't send demands. They sent fire. Plasma beams rained down, not on the palace, but on the outlying villages, on the very people Lyra had just welcomed back into her fold. Refugees flooded the gates, screaming, carrying the wounded. Joran didn't hesitate. He rallied the palace guard, organized triage in the eastern courtyards, and used his newfound senses to locate underground aquifers to quench the fires. But it wasn't enough. The Scourge ships were shielded, impervious to conventional weapons. Then Lyra remembered the world song. The Heartstone isn't just a key, she told Joran as they stood on the highest balcony, watching the black ships form a ring around the capital spire. It's a conduit. If we, the anchor, stand together upon it, we can awaken the planet's resonance field. But it requires total harmony. One misstep, one doubt, and the feedback could shatter our minds, or worse, tear Xerxes apart. Joran looked at her. So we sing to a planet. Got it. They descended to the heart of the palace, where the Heartstone now pulsed in the central chamber. Around them, the Scourge launched boarding pods, armored warriors with faceless helmets and blades that hummed with antimatter edges. As the first warriors breached the vault door, Joran stood before Lyra, his back to the stone. You do the singing. I'll handle the welcoming committee. He fought like a man possessed, his movements faster, his instincts sharper, his very presence seeming to disrupt the scourge tech. Their blades sparked when they neared him, their armor flickered. The Veilari blood in him was rejecting their false purity. Lyra closed her eyes, placed her palms on the heartstone, and began to chant. A low, resonant melody that vibrated through the stone floor, up Joran's boots, into his bones. It was the world song older than cities, older than stars. Joran felt it too. He didn't know the words, but he knew the feeling: grief, hope, love, loss, all woven together. And without thinking, he joined in, not with voice, but with memory. He thought of his brother, of the refugee girl on Silos 9, of Lyra bleeding in the sand, of the skitterwolves, the salt spires, the way she laughed when he joked about chocolate. The heartstone blazed. A wave of silver light erupted from the palace, spreading across the desert, up into the sky. The scourge ships shuddered. Their shields flickered and failed, not destroyed but transformed. Their black hulls softened, turned translucent, then bloomed with bioluminescent patterns, like living coral. Inside the ships, the faceless warriors removed their helmets. Their faces were Veilari, pale, silver-haired, weary. At their lead stood a woman with eyes just like Lyra's. "Soria," Lyra gasped. The woman stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "I didn't vanish, sister. I went to find the scourge, to understand them, to heal them, but they twisted my mission, made me their silent queen." She looked at Joran. "And I never believed a human could awaken the world song, until I felt it through him." The truth crashed over them. The scourge weren't enemies. They were lost kin, hardened by exile, misled by fear. And it had taken a human, a wanderer with a stolen chocolate bar and a stubborn heart, to remind them what unity truly meant. In the weeks that followed, the palace became a home not just for Veilari, but for all who sought belonging. Soria and Lyra ruled as co-sovereigns of a new spiral, one open to the galaxy, yet rooted in the song of its world. Joran, no longer just a wanderer, stood beside them. Not as a consort, not as a soldier, but as the anchor. The living bridge between bloodlines, between species, between past and future. And though his hair never turned white, and his skin never lost its earthborn hue, those who looked closely could see it, the faint silver shimmer beneath, the violet glint in his eyes when he laughed. He was both human and Veilari now, both lost and found. One evening, as the twin suns set and the desert sang its ancient lullaby, Lyra found Joran on the eastern balcony, staring at the stars. "Thinking of leaving again?" she asked softly. He smiled. "Nah, I hear the kids are due soon, and I promised to teach them how to hotwire a skitterwolf." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "They'll have your stubbornness, and my terrible singing voice. And maybe," he said, wrapping an arm around her, "just maybe, they'll inherit a galaxy that's finally learning how to listen." Below them, the city glowed, not with the cold light of conquest, but with the warm, pulsing rhythm of a world reborn. And in the silence between heartbeats, the bond between them hummed, not as a chain, but as a promise. The years that followed unfolded like silk unspooling in starlight, slow, shimmering, and full of unexpected grace. Joran never became a king in name, but in every other way, he was the heart that steadied the spiral. Lyra ruled with wisdom sharpened by exile, Soria guided with compassion forged in silence, and together, the three of them remade the Veilari legacy, not as a sealed vault of purity, but as an open door. And then came the children. First, a daughter Lyra, born under the twin eclipses, her skin the palest silver with streaks of warm olive along her cheeks, a perfect blend of desert moon and terrestrial sun. She cried with a voice that made the palace crystals hum in harmony. Then twins, Kian and Morel, bickering even in the cradle, one with Joran's stubborn brow and the other with Lyra's violet eyes that glowed faintly when she laughed. The palace nursery echoed with giggles, broken toys, and the sound of Joran reading Earth fairy tales in a terrible Veilari accent that made the royal tutors cover their mouths to stifle laughter. He never quite mastered the formal court dances, but he could juggle plasma grenades with his eyes closed, though Lyra insisted he stopped demonstrating that particular skill during state dinners after the incident with the ambassador from Grelth 7. He taught the children how to track sand vipers by scent, how to build shelters from dune shards, and, much to Lyra's private amusement, how to sneak sugar cakes from the royal kitchens using a distraction protocol involving stuffed skitterwolves and dramatic fainting spells. Lyra, in turn, taught Joran the old songs, the ones that made the desert bloom in the rainy season, the lullabies that calmed solar flares in the upper atmosphere. She never asked him to give up his past. Instead, she wove it into theirs. On his birthday each year, she served Terran coffee, bitter, black, and brewed from seeds long since extinct on Earth but carefully preserved in the palace vaults for sentimental emergencies. As she put it, their bond never weakened. If anything, it deepened, becoming less a tether and more a shared rhythm, like two stars orbiting in silent agreement. There were still moments when Joran woke in the night, drenched in sweat from dreams of Silos 9, and Lyra would simply pull him close, her skin cooling his fevered thoughts without a word. And when she trembled during council debates, facing those who still whispered that a human had diluted the royal line, Joran would stand just behind her throne, not as a guard, but as a quiet reminder. Love was not a weakness. It was the strongest kind of sovereignty. Soria, ever the diplomat, forged treaties with systems that had once feared the Velari as aloof and untouchable. Now, starships from a dozen species docked in the newly built orbital gardens above Xerxes Prime, trading not just goods, but stories, music, seeds, and children's drawings. The desert city of Velara, once austere and silent, became a mosaic of languages, colors, and scents. Spice stalls beside hydroponic orchards, street murals painted in bioluminescent algae, festivals that celebrated both the long rain and Earth's long-lost harvest moon. One evening, decades after that first meeting in the blood-streaked sand, Joran sat with Lyra on the same balcony where they'd once watched black ships descend. Now, the sky was clear, dotted with gentle navigation lights and the soft glow of orbital lanterns shaped like skitterwolves. Lyra's idea. To remind the predators we've made peace with them too. Their hair had silvered with time. Lyra's still luminous white, Joran's now a salt and pepper that made him look like a desert sage who'd seen too much and laughed through all of it. Their hands, wrinkled but strong, were clasped together. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked softly. He was quiet for a long moment, watching a flock of crystal-winged dusk birds glide between the spires. "I miss the smell of rain on pine needles," he admitted, "and the way my mother used to hum off-key while cooking. But Earth was never home. Not really. Home is this." He squeezed her hand. "You, the chaos in the nursery, the way Kian still tries to replicate my distraction protocol during exams. The fact that Morel once declared war on the palace laundry bots because they stole her favorite socks. This messy, loud, impossible life, that's my home." Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. "Good, because I've grown rather fond of your terrible jokes and your insistence that spicy is a personality trait." He chuckled. "You married a man who puts extra chili in his skyfish stew. What did you expect? A revolution," she said, smiling. "And you gave me one." Below them, the city pulsed with life, music rising from open-air theaters, children racing hoverskiffs through the market lanes, elders sharing stories beneath canopy trees grown from Terran oaks and Velari moonvines. The world song wasn't just a weapon or a relic anymore. It was the background hum of daily life, the rhythm of a civilization that had learned to listen, to bend, to love without borders. Years later, when Joran's steps slowed and Lyra's glow dimmed just a little, their children built them a garden on the highest dune, a place where desert roses and Terran lilies grew side by side, where the wind carried both Velari chants and old Earth folk songs. They sat there often in their final years, watching their grandchildren. Some with violet eyes, some with olive skin, all with hearts too big for one world, chase fireflies that had been bioengineered to mimic constellations. And when, at last, Joran's breath grew shallow beneath the twin suns, Lyra held him close, whispering the oldest lullaby of her people. His last words were simple, worth every grain of sand.